chapter 38 that we were talking about the other day.
I know, he's cruising along.
What do you think? Isn't that great? And I have black screen behind me, or can read it. So we were going down this, and we did most of it. And I'm not going to review it, but I want to get to one character actually. So one discovers that one actually is not capable of doing nothing. That is a very high level of functioning that maybe is happening on us all the time, but we don't see because we're so busy trying to find the right way to connect with the path, with the universe in harmony. And we realize we're at this first stage of Li, of ritual, in which you have to force yourself to do something, and that something is this character Li. On the left is the spirit radical, something from above coming down in three streams: the sun, the moon, the stars. And on the right is an altar with a vase of flowers. So it's what you give up to the higher divine forces in order to make a connection, or ritual, appropriate action. And of course it is the virtue of the heart, according to Confucius. But Lao Tzu has this whole different take on it. It is, the part of what happens when De flows down into the world and becomes. So in regard to Li, it's actually what he says, the beginning of the thinning of honesty and sincerity, and the beginning of chaos. And I think that's true. One can be living a perfectly happy life and then encounter the fact that there are higher forces trying to connect with you. And if you succeed in finding a ritual that actually does that in effect, it's not the beginning of a life of bliss and harmony, but it's more the beginning of a life of chaos. And that's what I get that he's saying, which was the same as what that guy encountered in the Wudong monastery.
Social law, right?
It is, and that's generally the way it's interpreted, and I think that's a totally legitimate way to interpret it.
Right.
He basically is saying people are following all these social rules, right, without any real connection to them in their hearts.
Right.
And it's the end of sincerity and honesty.
Right. Right, it's only when you've lost E that you need Li.
Yeah. When you have the ability to do the right thing at the right time, from your own inner knowing, you don't need to follow any ritual. Right. But if indeed you're like many of us who really don't do the right thing at the right time, it's kind of hit or miss. And oftentimes the best we can do is ritual, is a form that makes us feel connected. We have to also understand that there's a dark side to it, and that there's a price to pay, and that is, you have to rein in some of your natural spontaneity, and let go of your beliefs, whatever they are. So it's this next line, this before knowledge. Everybody wants to see the future. Everyone wants to have clairvoyance, to see what's coming. And basically what he's saying is that is the fruit of actually connecting with the Tao, with the real path, is that you do become a skillful diviner, which is the beginning of stupidity. And I find that interesting because it goes back to that movie where you have a real insight into things. And the reality is, as you come in contact, even if you do see accurately the situation in life and what's coming, you also realize how really stupid you are. It's an interesting character. It's a monkey in the heart.
Really?
Yeah, it's a, I mean, all of these things are.
The third from the end. Yeah.
Yeah, see the heart's on the bottom, and that's an abbreviation of a drawing of a monkey on the top, and it's one of the major Chinese words for stupidity. And it reminded me of my favorite chapter in the Tao Te Ching, which is chapter 20. Favorite in that I most relate to it. Chapter 38, I think, is the most important and that everyone should memorize. But chapter 20 is, for me, the most interesting because it's the only one that I know of in which he uses the character "wo" for I, in which he talks about himself personally. It's very unusual, and I think it must have been the guy who carried this thing to Sichuan and and dictated it to the gatekeeper, but then started talking about his own feelings about life. And it starts out with this annoyance at how the world as a whole is in terms of arguing about right and wrong and true and false, and the fact is nobody knows, and people just fear what everybody else fears. And then he starts complaining, which Li Jie never did, to my knowledge.
This is only Zhuangzi.
Well, it's very different for Lao Tzu. And the first thing he says is that the world is a wasteland. It's totally chaotic and without ending. And although many people are really happy with it, Shi, which is like a celebration. It's like what you do when you're at a party. You're happy. Like they're enjoying, the spring festival in China where they slaughter the ox and barbecue it, and then they go up to these towers in the springtime to watch the moonrise. It's like the most celebratory of the Chinese holidays, and it's two references to that. But he says, I, Wo, alone, am afraid, and some editions have a different character anchored. Both of them have white, one with the heart next to it, one with the water next to it, and I think either one applies. This word for alone here. This is a kind of an interesting word. It's on the left is the dog radical, so it's kind of if you're feeling kind of low and dog-like, and the other character is the character for Sichuan, actually, which is this remote province cut off from the rest of the country, but also the word for silkworm, and inside is an insect. In any case, it's the most common word for alone. And all through this, then, he talks about I alone. In fact, it sounds like that guy in the movie, he's had this experience, and now he feels different. He feels really alone.
Is it like a flea on a dog in a far-flung province?
I think that's very accurate. I bet that's been used in classical times. As someone who is waiting for a divination, waiting for a sign from God, waiting for some direction that will tell him where to go and what to do next. But he hasn't gotten it yet. But he knows it's there. He's waiting for it. Like a baby who is not yet a child. And one interpretation is, in China, there's this whole thing about the first time a baby smiles, then he's like a real person. And, before that, it's questionable whether they have a human being inside them.
I have always really enjoyed this chapter.
Yeah.
I've always really resonated with
Yeah,
it,
so have
feel
I.
like such a dullard most of the time.
And not only that alone.
Yeah.
Something happened at some point in my development that I feel, like nobody understands me. Nobody really gets the essence of what I understand, and everybody seems satisfied with their lives, except they actually, when you talk to them, feel the same way.
See, that's where we differ. Is I don't think I really understand anything.
Well, no, I think that's part of. I think wisdom and humility is understanding that you're stupid.
Yeah.
And that at best you have like a proto mind, like a monkey.
Right.
And that's the beginning of wisdom, really. Strung out, as if without a place to return to. Many people all have surplus, and I alone am a loser. And that's actually quite literally what that character means. It's really kind of a cool character, because inside it is the character for money.
Yeah.
And outside, the radical is the character for moving away. So having lost all your money, that's what that character means. And while they don't use the term loser, I think that's the best contemporary word for it. Yeah, destitute is more, I think it's more literarily accurate. Again, he uses the personal pronoun my or I. Now, in Chinese, this word wo can be either subjective or objective. It can be I, or it can be me or my. And in this case, I think he's talking about my, and the whole thing might actually be about me more than about I.
As a construct.
As a concept, because I has to do with a subject, with someone who has agency, who does, whereas me is the part of you that is done too. What happens is things happen to me. It's the way that language works, and I think there is an objective, subjective reality to it. That me is kind of more like your the person that you need to take care of. Whereas I is the person that thinks it can do things. Yeah. Or identifies with some sort of active agency.
He's talking about I.
Here I think he's talking about me, actually.
Oh, that wo is referring to me.
Yeah. And in Chinese it can refer to either one.
Right.
When they put it as the subject of a sentence, they usually say I. But I think he may be talking about, this thing that he feels as a human being when he realizes his own ignorance. Or his own, or moves a step
like the
further in enlightenment. So he has a stupid person's heart, innocent as a child. This dun word is almost always only used with hun dun, which is the Chinese term for chaos, things in the beginning. Ordinary people are clear and things seem obvious to them. I alone seem confused.
Like
Things just being born.
This is a child before it smiles.
Yeah. Yeah, and the word dun dun, if you look it up in the dictionary as a 2-character word, the meaning is given as innocent as a child. Now, so maybe it came from this. Who knows? But in classical Chinese, that's what dun dun means now. And this all seems obvious to most people, but I alone seem to be confused. Most people seem to be able to figure it out. I alone am, and this is an interesting character, it's a picture of a door, of a gate with a heart in it. And it basically means closed-hearted. Shut down, shut. It's a word for shut. in common speech, but it's kind of a beautiful image of the heart closed. Character alone keeps being repeated, and the character woe keeps being repeated in an interesting kind of way. That it's clear that he's either whining, maybe everybody has a bad day, and even though he's Lao Tzu, he's whining about how lonely he is. Also notice this she, this is one of the characters that gets repeated, and it's essentially a particle or a punctuation mark, really. It's a combination between an exclamation point and a question mark. It's like, what?
Even? Can't even. The original can't even.
Well, that's an interesting word because it has the water radical on the left, and then on the right it has a guy on a cliff speaking. And the definition of this word is really like a guy on a cliff looking at a calm sea. So you're up at a height and you're looking out to the ocean, and the ocean's just completely even, and it's that emotion of the vastness of something that's totally horizontal, perfectly even, and it's not necessarily a good feeling.
Like calm before the storm.
Like being becalmed. Boats and stuff. You don't want a totally calm sea like this. That's how people get stuck. And it has that funny punctuation mark after it, and then it says like the sea, and then it has this word liao, and that's an interesting word as well. That has a very definite definition, which is basically when you get up on a mountain, when you're in a high place and there's a constant steady wind that never quits. This is the word for that. And that also is...
That's a really cool looking character.
It is a cool looking character. It's got a bug in it, and then the wind radical.
Yeah.
And then stuff with feathers, it looks like maybe. But it's like, what a...
But up and out and like bugs flying.
And the wind not stopping, the wind constantly blowing, without a place of stopping. So these are very kind of vivid images, and you could make them into something pleasant, but they're actually kind of disturbing. Well, and then the knowledge that you have the possibilities of just jumping off and sailing. This movie, that's the climax of it. If you've ever seen it, she leaps off a cliff and flies away, maybe. Yeah, I think it's that kind of image. So then, this is a kind of a weird sentence that they don't really try to translate because it uses this word E. And remember back in the chapter 38, E is basically, the way I understand the way Lao Tzu is using it, is the indirect causing of things. And I think of it like the Godfather. You whisper to somebody something that then tells somebody else something that then makes it happen. Or for me, it's my effort to create a atmosphere that elevates people's consciousness without doing it directly by shooting chi into them. And I think that's a legitimate understanding of that term, because it really comes from the idea of with breath affecting things. But in this case, he's complaining that most people seem to have that, but he alone feels stupid and like somebody who's lower. And the character, actually, this B character, actually does refer kind of a caste thing. Like, in reality, there are probably a lot of people stupider than us. And sometimes you feel like one of them. But then the last lines I found always really puzzling, and I won't even try to translate them or explain what they might mean. My desire alone is different from people and values feeding the mother. You can go a lot of different ways with that. What the heck does that mean?
So,
Does that mean literally like the mother?
Yeah, literally that word means mother.
though he's referring to the dark mother, the mystery, the...
One would figure, I mean, more than likely, since he's pushing 100, he's probably not literally feeding his mother.
It's a typo.
It is one of those things that, you know, different people take different shots at in turn, and but it's obviously something metaphorical, something that from which we get our nourishment, and
Yeah,
that you
so-
have to give back to.
Yeah.
I think,
paying for one's arising, as
Yeah.
Jeep would put it.
Yeah, that's kind of the way I go with
Yeah.
it. Okay, I've gotten to the end of a thing without any huge technical glitches.
Yeah, well
I
done.
think it's worked good, and I even finished right on time.
Great, Bill.
Nice.
I'll have to review the footage now to see if the lighting was right. I've been working on it so that it you know, it's not backlit. It's you know, there's a balance on my face. It's not too bright. I think I found it.
Well, I really do like this chapter a lot. It's always kind of given me some sense of reassurance.
Yeah, it's so different and so, you know, oh yeah, you can have all these wonderful ideas, but you can still feel really alone and stupid in the world.
Well, I was just going to say, you know, I think it is also interesting that it's speaking from the place of wool.
Yeah,
You know, as if that's simply the experience of having a subjective experience.
Yeah.
Is that always will be removed and...
yeah. It's not like most classical writings. It's like in aphorisms, and they never use the personal pronoun.
Right.
It's, you know, it's when they use it, they really mean it in terms of. It's not just automatic
Maybe
like
means
we are.
ordinary people don't have wool.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's an implied meaning. Maybe
I think so.
Ordinary people don't have that.
don't have a real eye, don't have a perspective
that's why
from which
everything
they're
works so
they're
naturally.
looking at things. They're just reflecting the chaos that's going around them.
Who wrote this? You know?
Ah.
It does seem like the tone and just the way it's written
Totally different than anything else
in the
in the canon. Yeah,
Dao De Jing.
yeah.
So
And yet it goes all the way back. The oldest copies they has this in it.
yeah,
And if you actually read it in Chinese, you can see that there are two very definite different voices anyway
yeah.
in the whole thing. The first there, it's like it seems like somebody remembering classic aphorisms that the old guys say. And then giving a comment on it, usually in a political context, by how, you know, given these words of wisdom, this is how the wise man should go about ruling a country. It's like these two different voices, and it really kind of fits in with this idea of the archivist getting on a water buffalo and heading west, and being stopped at the outer gate of the empire and not being able to go forward until he writes down his accumulated wisdom. And so he's writing down what he remembers as most important from the archives and then giving his commentary.
Commentary, or is it a dialogue between two people?
I've always taken it as a dialogue between received wisdom and what one is understanding currently.
Yeah.
But there, you know, the consensus is that it's not a single author. You know, that it is a collection of some kind.
Was it Plato and Aristotle? One was the student of the other?
Yeah.
I mean, is it possible the scenario like that, where one person never actually wrote their thing down, but the student wrote it down and like they wrote it as a dialogue?
I think all writing is like that. All old writing is like that. And just the name Lao Tzu, just means old guy.
Or old child?
Yeah. Or old master, depending who wants to do what with that word.
Old seed.
Yeah.
And that was about the same time, wasn't it, as Plato?
Yeah.
500 BC?
Yeah.